Fourth grade, let's go ahead and take a look at our assignment today over in social studies. So we're going to go into fourth grade social studies, and when we open it up and we look on the landing page, I see that today we are looking at the Timelinks Unit 1 Lesson 7. We're going to look at the handout there, and we have some reading. So when we go ahead and hop into that Timelinks Unit 1 folder and we go down to Lesson 7, you're going to see that it says, hey, read the handout below with Mrs. MG in class. You're in luck. I am going to do that. Then it says complete the activities found at the bottom of the lesson. So we're going to go down here to the bottom of the lesson and we're going to look at this before I start kind of talking about our assignment today. So here's the reading we're going to look at here in class. And then right here, here's the assignment that we're going to look at as well. So it says, I have a dream. Be a reporter. Look at the pages on page 58 and 59 in your textbook. So you might be like, I don't have a textbook. Don't worry. Here are the pages. So that handout that's there, here's page 58. Here's 59. So that one before it, 56. So 57. So when it says like between pages 58 and 59, we know that that is this page here. So this is the page that our assignment has to go with. And it says, pretend like you're a reporter. Write a short news article based on the picture and what you've learned about the civil rights movement. Write it in your notes below. So who was there? Who was also speaking? What was it about? What was happening at this point in time? Where did this take place? When did this take place in history? And why were people there? Why was this important to them? Then it says, now write your article on a separate piece of paper. So this is twofold. You're going to turn in this handout, which shows the information that you got from doing the assignment. And then you're also going to turn in your summarization as a paragraph. You can also type this right here in the comment box if you would prefer to do that, in addition to turning in the handouts. Remember, this is two things. You're turning in your paragraph and you're turning in a handout. So let's go ahead and take a look at our reading together today. So, what was the civil rights movement like? And how did our conflicts that were happening in the country at that time, how did that kind of shape who we are as a country today? These are important things to think about, fourth grade. So as we get ready to kind of look at this and get going, it says Lesson 7 vocabulary. We're going to talk about something called communism today, discrimination, civil rights, and then terrorism. So a Cold War. In the late 20th century, we sent people to the moon and entered the computer age. It was a time of conflict, but also one of accomplishments and changes. Americans entered the 21st century ready to face the challenges ahead. The Soviet Union, a group of nations controlled by Russia, fought on the same side as the Allies in World War II. The Soviet Union had a communist government. This means that the government owned and controlled everything. After World War II, the United States began to worry that communism would spread, and the two nations became enemies in the Cold War. The war was not fought with guns and armies, but instead with ideas and monies. The two nations were involved in something called an arms race. Well, what is an arms race? So each nation had to work to build more atomic weapons than the other. That means that each side thought that these powerful weapons would keep the other side from attacking. So then we had the war in Korea. So the Korean peninsula had been divided into two different countries, North Korea and South Korea. North Korea had a communist government, and in June of 1950, North Korea attacked South Korea. The United States rushed troops to help South Korea. And in 1953, a settlement was reached to end the conflict between the two nations. So, when did the United States enter into the Cold War with the Soviet Union? We know that that was happening in the 1950s, and it was for something called the arms race. We also have different people who were there. So, people who were important in the 1950s, well, one of them was Elvis Presley. So, in the 1950s, a new style movement hit the scene called rock and roll. A young man from Mississippi named Elvis Presley became a teen idol, and Presley's music owned much to the music of the blues, gospel, and also to folk music. We also have some struggles that began to happen here at home and overseas. So, in August of 1963, thousands of people came to see Martin Luther King Jr. speak about the civil rights movement in Washington, D.C. So you might have thought that the Civil War improved lives of the African Americans when we talked about it last time and how slavery was ended and abolished. But we also know we talked about Jim Crow laws, so laws that were passed that stopped those citizens from being able to have all their rights as freed African Americans. While people of color were still not treated equally in many ways, both the North and the South were still having discrimination or an unfair difference in the way that people were treated. And during World War II, African American soldiers and sailors had risked their lives just like other soldiers did, but they began demanding equal rights at home. People joined together to take action. They began a civil rights movement. So, civil rights are the rights of all citizens to be treated equally under the law. Leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. organized marches and protests to gather support. And in 1964, the first of several laws called the Civil Rights Acts were passed. So finally, discrimination became illegal. Another war then broke out in Asia. So starting in 1961, the United States be involved in a war in Vietnam. Vietnam is a country in Southeast Asia, and Americas were bitterly divided about the Vietnam War. Finally, in 1975, the United States brought soldiers home. So we also had something called the space race happening at this time in history, fourth grade. So during the 1960s, the Soviet Union and the United States were competing not only here on the ground on our planet Earth, but also up in outer space. They were trying to be the first one or the first country to get a person to the moon. So in 1965, the American astronaut, his name was Neil Armstrong, became the first person to walk on the moon. We also have some new challenges that arose. So on September 11th, 2001, something happened that most Americans will never forget. Terrorists took over American Airlines and used them to attack the United States. Thousands of people died. President George W. Bush declared a war on terrorism. Terrorism, or the using of fear and violence to achieve political goals, has become a growing problem in the world. President Bush created a new department called the Department of Homeland Security. One of his actions in the department is to take the security at our airports. So American troops were also sent to fight in Afghanistan and Iraq, two countries in Asia. And these leaders were believed to be helping in that fight against terrorism. We also have a technology explosion that begins to happen at this point in history. So, when computers were first invented in the 1950s, one filled a whole entire room, it was so big. In 1977, a desktop computer was invented, and then in 2003, 2 out of every 3 Americans had a computer in their lives. Today, computers have changed the way that people work and communicate. We also have energy challenges that begin to take place. So, another huge challenge of our nation is finding enough energy sources. So, think about how our lives would be different if we ran out of gas for our cars or if we couldn't use electricity in our homes. We know that gasoline is made from oil and that the United States produces some of the oil, but not enough for everyone. So we buy oil from other countries, including places in the Middle East. Well, in 2005, there was a hurricane. It was called Hurricane Katrina, and it hit the Gulf Coast of the United States. our oil production in that region completely was shut down for a time. And this event showed us how important it is to conserve energy and also find other types of fuel. So, what are some challenges facing the United States today? We know that we had the war on terror that had happened. We also have a need for energy and what energy looks like, and we have a need for oil for keeping our country running. But we also have the challenge of wanting to make sure that we're taking care of our earth. So we have an event called Earth Day. So what is Earth Day? So burning gasoline produces something called carbon dioxide that can pollute the air. And since trees use carbon dioxide for food, one way that people celebrate Earth Day is by planting trees to reduce air pollution. People also reduce how much energy that they and water that they're using each day to help protect our earth. So, fourth grade, remember, you're doing this handout, okay? You're gonna write your paragraph and then you're gonna submit it here to Buzz. You got this, fourth grade.